you all for coming and for coming here today for the second event in our Race, Migration, Italy series this year. I am going to get to the description of the series in just a second, but before that, I want to do some thank yous. So first of all, thank you to Stefano Albertini. I don't know where he went, but he was just Stefano Albertini, the director of the Casa Italiana, who just had an enormous honor conferred upon him. He is now the highest official in the Italian Republic, given by our President Mattarella. So, applausi. Bravissimo Stefano, complimenti. And we're very proud. Thank you also to Julian Sachs back there in the booth for scheduling, setup, tech. He does it all. We really could not do this without him. Thank you to the Italian department, the Department of Italian Studies here at NYU, to everyone who has shown up, and especially Eugenio Refini, our chair, our administrators, Julie Canziani and Usama Gunas, and then also I want to thank our guests, Emily Wilbourne and Daphne Di Cinto. We're very excited to have them both in conversation after we view the short film, Daphne's short film. Thank you also, just a little shout out to my students who I see in the audience. Hey, thanks for coming. And so, okay, now the description of the event. So Race, Migration, Italy is a series of events, book discussions, theatrical performances, film screenings, lectures, sponsored by Casa Italiana Zerilli-Marimò in collaboration with NYU's Department of Italian Studies. It aims to promote conversations on the intersections of race and migration in Italy and in Italian diasporic communities. Conceived in connection with courses taught in the Department of Italian Studies, this series revisits the format launched by Casa Italiana's virtual salons, Discourses on Black Italia, held virtually during the pandemic, by bringing together artists and scholars in order to address questions about race and racialization across Italian history and its multifaceted geography. Thank you all. We're going to start with the film, and then we will transition into the panel portion. So thank you. All right, before we begin our panel discussion, I want to formally introduce everybody on stage. I didn't say my name before, I'm sorry. I'm Isabella Livorni. I teach here in the Department of Italian Studies. And also, if you all want to come sit up in the front, we're standing, it's up to you. And so let me read, this is Eugenio Refini at the end, chair of our Department of Italian Studies at NYU, who will also be in conversation with Daphne and Emily. So I'm going to start with Daphne's bio. Daphne Di Cinto is a Black Italian screenwriter, director, and actor. An alumna of the Actors Studio Drama School in New York, she was in the cast of Netflix's Bridgerton. Il Moro, her directorial debut, was longlisted for the Oscars in 2024. Daphne has won the Cultured Focus Visionary in Film Award 2022 and the Leader of Change and Creativity Award at the 2023 Black Carpet Awards. Her main focus is on stories about identity, historical memory, migrations, and the female gaze. Emily Wilbourne is professor of musicology at Queens College and the Graduate Center in the City University of New York. Her books include 17th-Century Opera and the Sound of the Commedia dell'arte, Chicago, 2016, lesbian/opera, Elena Katz-Chernyn's Iphis and Matricide, the musical, Lyrebird Press, 2022, and Voice, Slavery, and Race in 17th-Century Florence, Oxford University Press, 2023. That's primarily what she'll be speaking to us about today, or this evening. A collection of essays co-edited with Suzanne G. Cusick is available via open access, Acoustemologies in Contact, Sounding Subjects and Modes of Listening in Early Modernity, Open Book Publishers, 2021. All right, let's welcome both of our...
Thank you.
So I wanted to kick off our conversation with a question that I'm going to actually ask both of you. I'll ask Daphne to answer first. What was the genesis of your project, of your film and your book?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for having me again. I love being at NYU. And thank you everybody that showed up. I mean, I'm so glad to see a full house. So, the genesis of Il Moro. I was doing research on a different project, always set in the 1500s, and I randomly came across an online article, and the article was titled 10 People You Didn't Know Were Black. And number 10 was Alessandro de Medici. So when I read that, well, okay, little premise, and many of you are Italian, so you know this. We get taught Medici history like we eat spaghetti for lunch, right? So we know a lot about Medici history from elementary school all the way to university. So, of course, and I have always loved history. Of course, when I read this, my first thought was, that's impossible, because I would have known. And especially because as a Black Italian, and back then when I was younger, I heard so many times comments as, well, there weren't really people like you in our history. And here's this guy who is the first Duke of Florence. I'm sorry, this is honestly one of the biggest roles in Renaissance Europe, because Florence is the cradle of Renaissance. And this guy is Afro-Italian, and I didn't know. And not only I didn't know, but nobody seemed to know. Teachers didn't seem to know this. People in Florence only partially seemed to know this. People in the Council of Florence, some of them were like, he's like, his mother is a Moor, but nobody really ever talked about it, not in Italy, not abroad. And so then I started doing some research, more research, and I found this incredibly rich story that is just never told. And this goes beyond his background. That chapter of Medici history is just so interesting and intriguing, and the psychology of the character was so interesting to me. And at the same time, essentially, I thought to myself, this needs to be a series. This would be an incredible series. So that's what I started doing. I started writing a pilot for a series. And of course, it takes such a long time to get a series made. And I felt the need and the urge to tell this story. And I always wanted to direct. So I told myself, okay, we're going to do this. And it was 2020. I wrote the pilot between the first version of the pilot, because I've rewritten it about 23 times now. I started in February 2020, and I finished writing the pilot. It was end of May, beginning of June 2020, and then we all know what happened. And that event, of course, shook the world, but it really also... it was as if a cork popped that so suddenly I just felt how much I had personally repressed for years, how many things I had normalized, how my own upbringing really needed to be decolonized. And so this need to tell this story became even bigger. So in summer 2020, I wrote the script for the short film, and we shot it at the beginning of 2021. Long.
Well, I mean, I can't top that story. But the origin of my project can be traced back to my dissertation. I wrote a dissertation on the Commedia dell'arte actress Virginia Andraini, and she performed in these travesty roles really quite regularly, where she was cross-dressed as a male slave, and there's an image on the front cover of the title page of these plays that she was in, Lo Schiavetto and La Sultana, that has this very, very black face image. It has a slave collar on. It has very curly, dark hair. And when I was writing about those performances, I tried to find out as much as I could about the presence of Black people in Italy during this time, because these images were so incredibly striking. And I found almost nothing. And one of those plays has a scene in which other characters cross-dress as Jewish individuals, and I found so much literature on Jews who were present in Italy during this time. And so I wrote about that, and I wrote about Blackness more as a kind of a metaphor, but I felt like I hadn't dealt with it very well. And that work went on and became my first book, but what I really wanted to kind of find out, and as I spent a lot of time with opera libretti, there were often these enslaved Black characters in the opera libretti, and the rhetoric around them was always, well, these are metaphors, these are caricatures, these are not based in reality. And what I wanted to figure out was whether that was true or not. And I went to the archives in Florence. I had an Itati, so I got to spend a little bit of time there. And I thought I wouldn't find very much stuff, and then I found a lot of stuff. I found so much material that it really blew my mind. And I've been studying like Italian history as long as I've been an adult, and I was like, how did I not know this stuff was here? And the more I talked about it, the more other people said that they didn't know that this stuff was there. There is a literature, a growing literature on enslavement in Italy during the early modern period, but it is still relatively small. I got a lot of pushback initially, people telling me that I'd misread the sources, which is a hard thing to deal with if you're not mother language Italian to be, because maybe they're right. I'm sure I misread a lot of things.
They're not.
But I finished my book. This is what it looks like. It has a 150-page appendix of just all the sources that I found that mentioned either people who were enslaved or people who were Black or people who were Turkish. So I was particularly interested in juxtaposing in juxtaposing performances that represented foreign people and enslaved people with the lived experience of enslaved and foreign people. And so that's what the book tries to do. And I try to think about when somebody gets to be a full person on stage, when they have like a character development or a plot, or when they're just a stereotype, when they're like a two-dimensional kind of foil for the plot. And thinking about voice in that way is actually really illuminating for thinking about 17th century music, which is another, I will not bore you with the details of that now, because once I start, it's hard to rein me back in. But that's what the book's about, and that's where it kind of came from. Yeah, that's it, done.
Thank you both for presenting the sort of cores of your works, and I think that in very interesting ways the two sort of resonate with one another, and this is really the reason why we thought about bringing you two together in what is a fairly unusual combination of speakers, because we are talking about a contemporary product which is a piece of art, the film, and then we have a piece of scholarly work with substantial, more than substantial archival research, and actually also covering two slightly different time periods, because we are in the early 16th century with the film and the sort of history of the inception of the Medici power restored in Florence, and then we move ahead of time, and we get to the 17th century with Emily's book. But it seems to me that interestingly enough, some of the main preoccupations, main concerns of these two projects are really in tune with one another. And maybe we could sort of try to focus for a moment on the sort of three key terms which we came up with for this event: blackness, power, and representation. And maybe we can begin from the last one, representation, which of course is a very complex word because it means so many things. But I think in this case, the two main areas of meaning for this word are, one is the very practical, hands-on, performative dimension of performing. We have a film where we have characters performing, so the question of even choosing, right, what to show in the film is a very big question. Representation is relevant in a very similar sense to Emily's work, because a substantial part of it is about performers and the place of black performers in late Renaissance Florence. But of course, representation in a very political sense has to do with showing things, right? And being present in the discourse, being present in the sort of visual dimension of it. And I was struck by the fact that you both mentioned something interesting. You both got some sort of pushback in your different works, right? The community of scholars, sort of resisting the idea that documents are telling us a story which hasn't been told before. And in the case of Daphne, I guess, people resisting the idea, well, first of all, of telling that story, even in everyday life. I mean, you were saying, I grew up in Italy, and we weren't really told that, this guy was called Il Moro for some reasons, right? And also, I assume, some pushing back in terms of pushing back against the narrative which you are bringing up in the film. So, maybe you can share thoughts about this double-sided nature of representation and how this word and concept has been, sort of affecting your thinking about your two projects.
Representation is a word that I think about a lot in all of my work, and I thought about it a lot in this book. When we think about representation in modern, I feel so hesitant to say the word democratic society right now, but we have a very strong epistemology that representation is a positive thing, that allowing people to use their voices is a positive thing, and that through representation, through voice, we can create some kind of change. And those ideas don't necessarily transfer backwards into the past with the same meanings that they have today. And part of the project of European representations of blackness throughout the early modern period were about demonstrating not the humanity of the black individual, but quite the opposite, to prop up the humanity of the white individuals that were represented in the same operas, in the same portraits, in the same spaces. And that was one of the things that this film does so well, is documenting just how present these black figures were in the lives of many members of the Italian nobility throughout this period. It was a sign of wealth. It was a sign of geopolitical power. To have these individuals at your beck and call was to represent your power that went beyond just a sort of local or provincial power, but was literally representing the power of the sovereign. And so we then have a paradox as modern scholars who are looking to find and kind of resuscitate these representations as a way of documenting the actual physical historical presence of real people, and yet the representations that have survived into the present are not doing the representational work that we would expect them to do. And I think that's both a lesson for our own current moment, that representation is not sufficient, but it also means we have to deal very carefully with the representations that we find so that we don't replicate the harm that these means of representation were intended to do. Like, it's not a neutral historical record that we're dealing with.
I am actually so glad I get to thank you on stage. And I don't know if you guys know this, because this pairing is actually really serendipitous. Emily and I talked before I wrote the script of Il Moro. I got put in contact with Emily by a common friend in Florence. And we had this really interesting conversation about these themes and music. And Emily told me how back then, if you were anybody that wanted to listen to music, you couldn't just open Spotify and press play. You needed a person there to sing or play for you. And when you told me this, my mind glitched for a second. And I thought, of course, but I never really visualized it in this sense. So, our conversation really informed my choices in the film, so thank you so much. Anyway, kind of bringing it back to representation, I want to tell a story that I think really represents what we are talking about. So, Alessandro de Medici is buried in the Cappelle Medici in Florence, in Michelangelo's Sagrestia Nuova. This is the same place where Lorenzo the Magnificent is buried. If you had gone there about a year and a half ago, you would have found absolutely no mention of Alessandro de Medici in that place. To give you a bit of context, when Alessandro was murdered, spoiler alert, he was literally thrown in the tomb, in one of the tombs in the Sagrestia Nuova, in the one of his assumed father. This is a bigger part of the story. So, of course, his father was Clement the Seventh, right? I got it right. I know. It's, there's a debate around this thing. But essentially, at the time, it was said that Alessandro was the son of Lorenzo de Medici, the Duke of Urbino, who had just died, leaving the Medici dynasty without an heir. So he was thrown in the tomb of Lorenzo, who had died time before. And he was closed there and never really given an actual real burial, to the point that for 500 years, his name is not even in front of his tomb. The first Duke of Florence doesn't have his name in front of his tomb. When I went there, I was just flabbergasted about it, and I asked, well, it's a really quaint, intimate room. You should go if you've never been. And there's always a guard standing literally next to Alessandro's tomb. And so I asked the guard, and I was like, do you know that Alessandro de Medici is buried in here? No idea. Anyway, fast forward, we do the movie. The movie catches some buzz, and there was a moment where I thought to myself, this needs to change. So I petitioned the Council of Florence, and I asked them, why, after 500 years, you guys still forgot Alessandro de Medici's name from his tomb? I didn't really say it like that, but I wrote this petition that I really wanted to get artists and people to sign it before presenting it, but I asked a councilwoman that I knew if she thought the format was right, and she told me, save it in PDF and send it to me. This was a Friday, and on the Monday, she brought it into the council to discuss it. Apparently, part of the conversation was coming from the right-wing party of the council, was that we were trying to Africanize Italy. Now, you have to explain to me, how are you gonna Africanize a guy who's of African descent? Okay. Anyway, the petition was actually accepted. And after a full year, they finally put Alessandro de Medici's name in front of his tomb. After 500 years. Yeah. And, representation, I mean, even just a name in a tourist panel is the difference between existing and not existing. And when we're talking about visual representation, it's even stronger. Today, we live in a world of images, and we define ourselves with images. And it was really important for me to give a visual of what Alessandro de Medici actually looked like, because how would society change if in our education, from when we're little, we get to learn that the first Duke of Florence is Afro-Italian? Is this going to normalize the presence of Afro-Italian people finally or not? And I strongly believe that education is the way to go, because when I'm a kid and I know that Alessandro de Medici is Afro-Italian, I don't grow up doubting the existence and legitimacy of Afro-Italian people in the country that we call home. So yeah, representation.
Thank you. This was a very good way to sort of address the question, I think.
So this actually then, I would thinking about kind of going with Eugenio's format about the keywords that we've chosen for this event, thinking about Blackness. And this is a question that I know both of you get all the time. And I think it is a way, in part, of deflecting the presence of Blackness historically in Italy, right? But this idea of racial categories were different back then. How can you know, the accusation of the application of present-day racial categories onto the past? Of course, we don't want to deny that racialization is fungible, changes according to histories and geographies. But how do you respond generally when you are faced with this kind of polemical question?
Yeah, we can all agree that race in the 1500s wasn't what we define race today. So in the 1500s, Alessandro's quote-unquote problem wasn't his skin tone, but was his low birth. And as you see in the movie, Polito keeps on harping on the fact that the guy is of lower status than him. And that's what, that was the conversation around him not being in the right position to represent the Medici family. Now, race the definition of race that we have today actually starts, the first germs of it start in that period of time, because of course, right after we start having what then leads to the slave trade, but this is another story. So essentially, when I looked at Alessandro's story and I found this, I could not but draw such a strong parallel to the experience that we have today in Europe as Afro-European people. Because if Alessandro's problem is his low birth, it looks like in Europe the problem is our skin tones, because there is a definite demarcation when you walk down the street and people address you as native or non-native. And I swear to you, I speak Italian way better than many natives. And I keep on being asked stupid questions as, why is your Italian so good? Or, when they ask me where I'm from and I say that I'm from Italy, things I hear are remarks as, oh yeah, I know other foreigners. I just told you I'm from Italy? Okay. So essentially this is about where the conversation is. And I really felt strongly about drawing this parallel in the film, because this film, it's a real story from the 1500s, but it's also the story of Afro-Italian and Afro-European people in conversation with their nation. And I put in that script so much of that emotion.
So there was a word in early modern Italian that is the word razza, R-A-Z-Z-A, which is the word that is now used for race. And it was used in a way that when people translate it now from the early modern Italian, they regularly translate it instead as lineage, because they say more like I come from a race of kings, or I come from a race of thieves, or my race, and it's in poetic lines that are talking about the lineage of a particular family. But one of the things that's really important to add to that discussion is that lineage, your family lineage, was understood to pass on things from one generation to another. So the very idea of a monarchy that can be inherited, like a line of inheritance, is based on the idea that that family has something, that the nobility has something inherent in their body that members of the regular populace do not have. And it is absolutely true that the Medici dukes, or the Grand Dukes as they were in the 17th century, saw themselves as fundamentally different from the peasants who lived just on their lands outside the city. But this idea that you're passing something down through your lineage, something that is inherited, that is passed down through blood, is exactly the same premise that fuels modern racism. The idea that you are suited to certain occupations or certain intellectual capacities are inherent in what you have inherited through your genetic, biological material. So it's less that they didn't have racism in the 17th century, but that racism meant classism, and it meant racism, and it meant religion. It meant all of these things. The idea that a peasant could become the duke was equally as problematic as the fact that somebody from Africa, like they had visiting nobility that came from Africa that was celebrated with official diplomatic welcomes, and they had visitors from Asia, they had visitors from elsewhere who were treated like nobles because they were nobles, and they regularly exchanged women in their families with other European noble families from other countries who spoke other languages, who were markedly foreign. But I think it's very important to understand that over time, whiteness began to be sufficient to change class, but it stayed in our concept of modern racism. So rather than thinking of like, oh, we invented racism, it's actually that we kind of invented whiteness that allowed people through education to move across boundaries that previously had been understood to be passed only through lineage, through the inheritance that you got from your forefathers, from your foremothers, and that was passed down as a kind of set of capacities that you were born with. And we see this in the stories that are told in the early modern period all the time. There are like countless plays and libretti and novels where somebody is removed as a child and brought up in a peasant's hut, and yet they speak beautiful, eloquent Italian, and they wouldn't think of doing these horrific things, and the child they were switched with, who was a peasant at birth, is boorish and has no manners despite having been raised in the palace. And then later they're like, oh my goodness, they were switched at birth. As if the years of living in this place have given them nothing. But those stories obviously are exaggerated. They're stories, they're theatrical representations, to bring that word back, but they make sense within a culture that firmly believes that your right to be the ruler is passed down, and that there's something inherent in your bloodline, in your body, and that affected people of all walks of life, not just people whose skin happened to be a different color. I think, for me, that's a very useful way to sort of think about what it might mean to discuss the meaning of race or the meaning of racism in earlier periods than the one that we're in right now.
This is so interesting, and also I think so clear in terms of really telling us such a long narrative, right? Because of course we are talking about the Medici, we are talking about 17th century Florence, but then we see how most of these questions in different ways continue to be relevant. And of course language is key. I think we should have added language as a keyword, but maybe before getting to language, I don't know if we will have the time to get there, I wanted to maybe bring up the other term, because power is of course very important to both representation and blackness in this case, but is very important in the film, I think. And, I guess even in the dynamics, which Emily explores in her book, in the sense that I was struck by the subtle way in which the power dynamics are described in the film, because of course you have this family power dynamics. You have the father, who's of course not only a biological father in the narrative, but also the Pope. So it's kind of a double-sided sort of meaning of the term father, with two different ways of performing power. Then you have the cousin Ippolito, who's of course the villain in a way in the story to some extent, and then you have the sort of rise to power of Il Moro himself, right, of Alessandro. And then I thought that something extremely beautiful to my mind is this idea of shifting from this male-dominated kind of narrative, right, because we have these three men sort of interacting for basically the entire film. And then we have this beautiful moment at the very end of the film. The only woman in the film comes in, right? And in a way, she has the last word, which I think is very powerful. And, since this is not a story about her, but, she's there, right? And powerfully so, kind of challenging a bit this sort of, as I said, male-dominated narrative, which the other three are performing, because the three of them kind of buy into this, almost toxic way of interacting, right? And she's kind of always there, and yet she's not, and, you give her not only a voice, but also a face, right? Because we see her, and, could you say something about what brought you to that particular choice?
Can I add to this question? Because it was something I was thinking about. It was something I was thinking about as well with the murder of the singer. In a way, you're giving at the kind of climax, the kind of momento clou of the plot. The kind of big thing that happens is his murder. That's what we see. What did it mean to kind of put that at the climax like that, centering this character in that way?
Thank you for these questions. I feel so understood, Eugenio. Thank you. I love talking about the mother. So in the series that I'm going to do, the mother will have her own storyline. If you know any producers, send them my way. I'm not kidding. So in the short film, when I wrote one of the first drafts of this short film, it was much longer and the mother was there. And then I realized I didn't have the budget for that. So I had to cut down and understand how I could, bring this story to, the level it needed to be in the most economical way. But the mother for me had always been central. Her role is there from the first minute. When the film opens, you hear this voice. That's the mother. The mother is always either in his mind or is an uncomfortable presence in the dynamic of the relationship, especially with the Pope. And the way I wanted to go about it in the short film was that I wanted the mother to slowly approach, even though I couldn't have her in the actual visual throughout the short film. I wanted her presence to be tangible. And so starting with this voice that is kind of a memory in somebody's head, and then slowly this voice becomes more and more present, and it keeps on coming out in relevant moments, and then it ends with her coming in because she's there and she's always been there. So yeah, definitely it was a conscious choice reframing this story in a way that put the mom in her rightful place, in a place that, again, has just been, just forgotten. or just not deemed important. But there's no Alessandro de Medici without his mom. So that goes for the dynamic of the...
And sorry, just before moving to the singer, and I think that the act of naming is so powerful, right? Because, again, in this sort of tradition of men of power, beginning with the very origins of whatever narrative you want to come up with, the idea of naming things, or even naming, it's God who names Adam. There's something, this very sort of patriarchal, inevitably, way of using the act of naming as a way of sort of defining things. And in this case, at the end of the movie, we have the mother who comes up with her way of calling him, which is different from the way in which the other men of the family are talking to him and calling him. So I think that's a very, I would say kind of a strongly sort of feminist gesture. I don't know whether you thought about it in this way, but that's what I think we get out of that as members of the audience.
Good, I'm glad. Yes, there's that, and there's another parallel that brings us to the contemporary, because in that decision lies the awareness of how many second-generation Italians have to kind of like adapt their name, and this happens to second generations everywhere, because it's too difficult to pronounce. Going back to the concept of representation, I really wanted to give the max representation I could in every aspect of this movie. And so that was one of them. And talking about the singer, that choice, I don't know if today I'd make a different choice there, but that choice was strongly influenced by 2020 and George Floyd. Essentially, when that happened, I still live in London, and I had never been to protests before in my life. And two of my best friends who are not black decided to go to the protest, and I was scared. And I'm also an only child, and I always have my parents' voice in my ears, right? And I was like, I don't know if I want to come, because what happens if they arrest us? Anyway, at the beginning I said I wasn't gonna go, but the feeling wouldn't leave me alone. And of course, afterwards I decided to go, so I joined my friends and we took an Uber to Hyde Park, and this was right out of the first lockdown in the pandemic. And I remember walking out of that Uber and finding myself in the busiest Hyde Park I've ever seen, where there were people coming from every walk of life. And I hear some Italian behind me, and I turn around and I see these two Afro-Italian people that I didn't know talking between each other, and they say, "Oh, hey, you're here too." "Oh, yeah, I am." And I turn around and I start crying, because all of a sudden I just realized the weight of everything I had swallowed during my childhood and teenage years and early adulthood. And so I really wanted to pay my respects to that moment. Yeah.
Clap her. Thank you. I'm so glad that moment is there, because for me that was like such a clear moment in which we saw exactly what my book is about, which is people having voice but not having agency. And this is a singer who is trained, their voice is a gift, dono, as Ippolito says, and yet it can be taken from him, but it also isn't his to wield. He sings on command. Come here. He's a playback device. He's an object or a possession that belongs to somebody, and it's that possession is exacerbated by the fact that he's represented as black. But that was true of many singers during this time period, probably of all singers, who were professionals and, you know, at somebody's beck and call. And the fact that there's the implication that he is also a castrato singer in the piece is also very powerful, because this is something that we really associate with the Italian Renaissance and the Baroque period. And its sort of barbarity by modern standards is a kind of constant reminder of cultural difference between then and now. Though as I try and talk to my students about it, I'm like, you have to think of moments where people make decisions for their children that may endanger their health or their longevity, such as American football or gymnastics or ballet for girls, ways that will, if they are good at something, they may be pressed by their parents, or they themselves may wish to pursue something that is not in the best interest of their physical longevity or their passing on of their genes, and yet people make that decision because maybe they're going to be a star, maybe they're going to be this breakout kind of success. But when you see that singer in those scenes, he has no agency in those scenes, and the parallel with like the George Floyd is like super powerful in and of itself. But even if that hadn't like had that like specific 2020 moment, I think it's really extraordinary to be able to see this representation of voice, of musical performance, of like people as objects, all kind of wrapped up in this pageantry and a music that was itself very valued, while the person making the music wasn't necessarily very valuable. Could be like the Pope is like, what did you do that for? Like this represents in years of investment in training and whatever, right? It's all been sprecat or thrown away because of this moment of rage on the part of Ippolito trying to prove something. But I think it's really needs to be there. I'm glad it's there.
Good.
So we're going to open up some questions from the audience. We have Stefano back there who would like it. Theo, would you mind do you want me to run it back to him? No, faccio io. Non fa niente. Ecco qua.
Thank you so much. I have a million questions for Daphne. I'll take you to eat some Greek food and then I'll ask you
Sounds
the other
good.
remaining ones. But in the meantime, first of all, I invite my students to sign up to show that you're here. We use the Hibbert book in our class, and we have studied the history of Renaissance Florence. And Hibbert mentions the possibility that you present in your film that Il Moro is indeed the son of a Moorish slave. Whereas more Italian historians, even very respected ones, absolutely rule out that possibility in a very superficial way, I may say, because it seems all based on sentito dire. So you really are pause when you see that these people are so resolute in excluding the possibility that Hibbert, that is a very serious British historian, presents as a possibility, and they exclude the possibility without really saying what are the proofs that they have to rule out that. So that's the first question. The second question is related to what you mentioned about the low birth. So it's not, you say, probably at that time it was not a question of race, but it was a question of low birth. So while I was seeing this dialogue of these three men, all three of them are illegitimate children. So none of them is of high birth. They happen to have a Medici of some sort as a father, and they happen to have a woman that does not belong to the Medici family. I hesitate to call the Medici aristocracy, because at this point they're not yet. But you know, they were somehow old money of some sort. So I'm reposing the racial question. Is this contempt that definitely was there on the part of Ippolito, at least, for his cousin, based on race? Because how could he have contempt for Alessandro when he himself was the result of an illegitimate relationship? So just a doubt that I have in my mind that is like the racial issue, the pigmentation of the question, could it still be present, given the fact that all three of them share the same low or high birth, or mixed birth, if we want, of a known father with an important last name and of a mother of quote-unquote no relevance? Thank you, Daphne.
Thank you. Okay, let me start from the beginning. Jean Nestor, in his book about the men of the Medici family, and this is a book that is written after Alessandro de Medici's death, but still at a time where people would, have a memory. And he writes, black on white, that Alessandro de Medici's mother was a Moor. So I love it when people just want to question, because I'm like, just read. And all the doubts that are being disseminated come centuries after. And there are quite some studies that actually argue that they come from the beginning of the 1900s with, all the racial theories that, then went to make fascism. Where do I want to go with this? Backtracking a little bit, the historians that were contemporary to Alessandro describe him in a way where, when we read it, we're imagining a man of African descent. They describe his features, his prominent mouth, his prominent nose, and his hair that in some instances is described as woolly. I mean, sure, use that for a white guy. Where to go? Oh, okay, yes. And there is a really interesting paper written by a scholar, I think her name is Roby, and it's titled something like Making the Memory of Alessandro de Medici. And she argues how everything that we know today about Alessandro has been written by historians, his contemporaries that were actually opposing him. Like, so they were for the opposing political party at the time. So it's a description and I guess a remembrance that is definitely biased, because these guys wanted Alessandro to come across as a tyrant. This has nothing to do with race, what I'm saying, but I think it really shows you how, memory can be a point of view. And, and also, I just wanna, do I have my phone? I do have my phone. I'm gonna show you a picture. So, every time I have this conversation, I talk, and then I show a picture. But also, before I show you this picture, let me also tell you how the first thing I did when I read about Alessandro was, as everybody does, go on Wikipedia. And Wikipedia at the time said something along the, I don't know what it says now, but I'm too tired to look. But at the time it said, there is a rumor that Alessandro de Medici's mother was a Moor, but essentially said it's not true. And the only reference to this was La Treccani, and the contributor to Treccani in this section doesn't really give, as you said, other sources to back the fact that he's saying that Alessandro's mother was not a Moor. So when the trailer of the short film came out on social media, I started getting a bunch of social media hate. And the most common comment was, "It is not true that Alessandro de Medici was black." And I was like, because Wikipedia says so. So I was like, I am tired of this. Let me go change Wikipedia since everybody can. So I spent my precious time writing a whole paragraph about Alessandro de Medici's background with sources. I put it on, time 24 hours, my paragraph is gone, deleted, okay? So I think, oh, maybe it's me. Maybe I just made a mistake. Let me put it up again. I put it up again. Time 24 hours. The paragraph is gone again. This happened about 4 times. I think I've changed it on both. Yeah. Yeah. And so, and so at some point I couldn't just kind of play ping pong with whomever was taking this down, and I focused on making my movie. But, this, to answer your question, but also the picture. So, I think that after reading and after, doing our research and our scholarship, there's another thing that we can do, and this thing is look at the paintings that we have of Alessandro de Medici. And I'm sorry for the people that are further up. I don't know if you can see him, but this is a portrait of Alessandro de Medici close to a picture of Alberto Malanchino, who is the actor that plays Alessandro in my movie. These guys are the same person. Do you see them? They are the same person. Google it. It's on our Instagram. Follow us. It's Il Moro Film, and you'll see this picture. So I think that other than doing our research and looking for our sources, it's really important to use our eyes. This work has really made me. It's expanded the way I look at art. I've always loved going to museums, but after I did Il Moro, I start seeing Black presence when I go to museums. While before my eye wasn't trained to do that. So there's something there.
I think we had a question up in front. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. A bad Theo, you choose.
Okay, let's just start this way.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
First of all, just thank you so much. It's been really illuminating to see how much of your lived experiences have imparted themselves in your film. And I guess playing off of that question, I had 2 questions about 2 particular moments in the film that kind of stuck with me. And at the end of the film, right after Alessandro kind of accepts the position, he immediately says, "And commission my portrait." Yes. And I just wanted to ask about that line and its placement and its relation to his legacy and just with the erasure of his history, with his name not being on the tomb, was this a moment where he's saying, okay, I'm accepting this role and remember me? And I guess the second question was more generally just about the camera angles in the film, and especially the when he's almost looking at the audience as he's communicating and about his mother's religious background. And so I just wanted to ask about the intentionality of that. So.
Thank you. Yes, so let me start from the second one. I really wanted the intimacy in that scene, and I wanted us to be right with him in the thought process and in those burning questions he's been wanting to ask but hasn't had the courage to. And so that's what informed those close-ups, but I also really wanted to, I don't know if it's the same expression in English, jump the line. So essentially when you film 2 shots, you're supposed to stay on the same side of this imaginary line so that the camera doesn't flip them. But sometimes it is a choice to do that. And in this instance, that's what I chose because I wanted that moment to be the one where things start getting shaken up and our point of view starts getting shaken up. Who holds the truth? Does anybody hold the truth? Is the truth just one, or can it be multiple? So that's about the angles. What else you asked me? The portrait line. Yes, so that has quite a few levels of past and contemporary. In the past, of course, as the new ruler of Florence, Alessandro would have wanted to, to his image and his presence to be shown. Back then, being Instagram not a thing, they had to have portraits and paintings, and those paintings define who was important. If you were put in a painting, that means that your story had some sort of a relevance, and so it belonged in that world, like you existed in that world. And of course, coming from the contemporary point of view, him asking for that portrait is a bit of a meta conversation of this film getting made, and Alessandro de Medici being given the visual that he's lacked for 500 years.
I think we have time for one more question.
Or two very quick ones, right?
Maybe I won't talk that much.
Like Stefano, I have a million questions, but I'll try and keep it to one. First of all, could you very briefly just tell us a little bit of the history of, for those of us Americans who know even less about the Medici than you did as an Italian growing up, can you tell us a little bit more about Alessandro and his life without, we already know the spoiler.
How is this going to be a short answer? But no, go ahead.
So, I really want the Wikipedia entry. Second is, there was a major expansive show at the Metropolitan Museum of the Medici portraits about a year ago, and I was wondering if you know if his portrait, if it exists. I'm not clear.
It was there, Adriana?
That, yeah,
Yeah, Adriana says it was there.
it was there. I don't recall seeing it, but that's interesting. And this is a really big question that's really for you. Is it accurate to say that this story has been left out of academic teaching in Italy and elsewhere? So those are can of worms questions, but thank you. It was brilliant. So
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, super quick excursus about Alessandro de Medici. Alessandro de Medici is born in 1510 in probably Rome, because the Medici were exiled at that time. He is, well, my point of view marries the theory that he is a son of Pope Clement VII, that at the time was just Giulio de Medici, and his career in the church came after. When he's legitimized into the family, because the family doesn't have any more legitimate heirs, actually it does have one legitimate heir, it's Caterina de Medici, but of course she's a woman, so why would we want her as the leader of a family? So he gets legitimized into the family, and he gets given as an official father Lorenzo, the Duke of Urbino, who has just died. At the beginning of this, new acquisitions, Ippolito de Medici is the one that is favored in leading the Medici dynasty. In fact, from the letters and correspondence, we understand that Alessandro was literally kept in a corner. There's this one letter with dignitaries going, oh yeah, the Pope was around with his illustrious nephew Ippolito and another nephew. They don't even name him. Because of a series of fortunate and unfortunate events, the Medici get exiled again, and Clemente VII does this deal with Carlo V, and he will name him the Emperor of the Sacred Roman Empire if Carlo V will name Florence a dukedom. And because at this time Ippolito had been made cardinal by the Pope, because he was sick and he was scared he was going to die, and he wanted the Medici to still have influence in the Vatican. Of course, he goes, well, you can't be, the Duke, so Alessandro is going to be the Duke. And, big drama ensues. Alessandro eventually becomes a Duke, and he is murdered in 1537 by another cousin, Lorenzino de Medici, also called Lorenzaccio, who kind of pays. Why are you laughing? He's called Lorenzaccio. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, for the American people in the room, in Italian, when you put the accio at the end of a word, it's dispregiative. So yeah, bad Lorenzo. And yeah, this is how Alessandro de Medici's life ends.
This was sort of, super clear. Yeah, I mean, I would say that the question about the teaching, just very briefly, the answer is yes in that. Well, first of all, of course, the Medici history is complicated. Too many Lorenzos, too many Lorenzos. And I think, there's kind of a footnote right in the sort of school teaching about Alessandro, but certainly, till recent times, nobody was told, not even about the possibility, right? I mean, of course, even if one doesn't want to get into the scholarly debate about it based on, whatever arguments, even the possibility that Alessandro Il Moro was in fact of African descent was never raised. And I think this kind of omission is really in line with the broader way in which Italian history and culture and literature has been taught for decades, right? I mean, this sort of myth, so to speak, of an Italy made just of whiteness, right? I mean, which of course we do know is very inaccurate and very far from reality, but that's been part of the canon. So yes, it's kind of a new thing, I would say, right?
Up actually, because you can approach our speakers, but we do need to wrap it up. So thank you much.
One thing. Thank you, but I also would like you to join me in a round of applause for my producers, Taylor Lynn and Franklin Eugene.
So thank you all for being with us.
Thank you very much.
And to be continued.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daphne and Emily.